Do you have the ability to separate your hips from your upper body or vice versa? That's called dissociation. And at THP, we have 3 separate tests that we like to use to test for dissociation. Dissociation is what helps create lag, speed, and power in a golf swing, a football throw, a baseball swing, a tennis swing, anything that's including rotation, you're gonna use dissociation. So what is dissociation? Well, the easiest way to explain it is one segment of your body being able to move off of another segment of your body. So let's show you what it looks like. In potentially a golf swing, dissociation is gonna be the ability of the hips to go first and actually rotate without the upper body following. It's super important in a bunch of different sports because that initial move helps create that slingshot effect, which gives us power, speed, and distance. Not being able to disassociate your hips from your upper body or vice versa is gonna make it really hard to create a consistent, powerful swing. So we use 3 separate tests here at THP to identify, do you have the ability to disassociate and can you do it consistently? So let's get into those 3 tests. We'll go over why we do them and what they mean. Our first screen comes from TPI and is the pelvic tilt test. What we're looking for is, do you have the ability to smoothly go from anterior to posterior pelvic tilt? So what that looks like is hips forward and then coming through at impact. So going from an anterior tilt to a posterior tilt. People who can do this are really maximizing their power because they're getting their glutes to engage and they're gonna have a more consistent swing where they don't early extend or fall into some of these other tricky problems. In the pelvic tilt test, you're gonna have your golfer or any rotational athlete line up in what we call a 5-iron position, so more of an athletic stance. From here, they're gonna cross their arms over their shoulder, and they're gonna start in more of a neutral tilt. What you're gonna have them do is dump their pelvis forward and then try to round it back. You're gonna go forward and back a few times, and what you're looking for is, can the person dump forward and backward without what we call shake and bake, so it's nice and smooth, and are they going about the same distance forward as they are backward? You're also looking to see if the shoulders and feet stay in the exact same position as where they started. This will tell us that they can stabilize upper and lower and let the middle of their body do the work. So let's go into the scoring for the test. A person who scores at the optimal level is someone who can go into anterior and posterior tilt equally in both directions and with no shake and bake, so it's very smooth. Now, someone who's not as optimal may not be able to go anterior or forward, or they may not be able to go posterior. Another option is someone who can do both, but in between anterior to posterior, they start to shake and bake is what we call it. And that is basically not having the motor control to make it smooth and efficient. This test is really important for power production and it lets us know if you can control your hips going forward and backward with no shake and bake, nice and smooth. Now we're gonna look at, can you control your hips rotating side to side? The next test also comes from TPI, and that is a hip rotation screen. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have our athlete assume the exact same start position with their feet about shoulder width apart. We're gonna drop into that 5-iron stance and we're gonna have our arms go across our chest. From here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna try to rotate our hips left and right without our chest moving at all. So we wanna see if we have the ability to lock our upper body down and move our lower body off of the upper body. The people who score optimally on this test can not only get into a full hip rotation into their backswing, but can also get into a full follow through. That's gonna create a ton of consistency with their swing and stop things like early extension, sway and slide, and other things just like that. Now let's get into the scoring for the test. An optimal score would be someone who, when they're set up, they can rotate those hips back and forth without the feet moving off the ground and without the shoulders moving at all. This tells us they have a really good ability to lock down the upper body and the lower body and make those hips move. Someone who has a little trouble with this might gain some points when we hold their shoulders. That's the second part of this test. So you as a practitioner come in to hold the shoulders and they're gonna continue the same test. If this gets easier for them to get into a deeper hip rotation, that tells us we need to train upper body stability and learn how to lock this down so that we can move these hips off of that stable upper body. If someone can stabilize the upper body and move those hips nice and smooth, both directions about the same amount, they're gonna get that optimal score. But if they have a hard time getting into one side, or one side is drastically different than the other, they're not gonna receive that optimal score. Also, it is considered suboptimal if you improve when we hold the shoulders. So why do we do this screening? Well, it's important for my tennis players, my golfers, my baseball players, even football players who throw. It's important that we know you can separate your lower body from upper body, because that's what's going to create power, distance, speed, and consistency. Our last screen is our upper body dissociation test. With this test, we're gonna have the athlete line up in the exact same way they lined up before. Now they're gonna go into that 5-iron or athletic position, they're gonna cross their arms, and what we're gonna do, having their eye down on the ball, we're gonna have them rotate just their upper body right and left. What we're looking for is, can they lock the lower body down now while the upper body moves around that stable base? The hips being able to go first on a downswing are just as important as our ability to separate the upper body from those hips while they make that move. That's why we like this screen, because it tells us, can you actually rotate in the upper body to get there under your own control? Let's get into the scoring for this test, which is going to be really similar to the test we just did, which is our hip dissociation test. Here, we're going to go ahead and look, can they rotate evenly to the right and to the left, and do their hips and their lower body stay stable? If they don't, then we know we need some more lower body stabilization. From here, an optimal score is going to be someone who can rotate evenly on both sides while keeping their head locked down in the center position, and someone who doesn't move the lower body. A suboptimal score is going to be someone who can't keep the lower body under control while they start to rotate. If this leaks open, then we know that's not going to work. Also, a suboptimal score is someone who needs some stability from us where we hold their hips. If they improve when we hold their hips, it's just like our hip dissociation test, where added stability is going to add to the mobility. So we know as practitioners we need to add lower body stability exercises to help the upper body gain control of that mobility. The torso dissociation test is super important for all the sports we mentioned before, because again, it's going to tell us, can we add some separation between our lower and upper body and create that slingshot effect. If you have a hard time with any of these screens, it's more likely that you might suffer from something like early extension, hanging back, sway and slide. Any of those can fit the bill. So we want to make sure that we can disassociate when we want and how we want to. Now, on the other side, if you are optimal at all these tests, it's most likely that you're going to have a consistent, repeatable, powerful swing. These 3 screens give us a ton of information as to whether or not you can separate your upper and lower body, you can rotate your lower body on your upper body, and if you can rotate your upper body on your lower body. There's only one way to find out if you can truly disassociate, and that's by getting a THP screen where we include all 3 of these dissociation tests. If you're interested, let us know.